So there's a series of meetings all around the country actually today to acknowledge and support Barry Young, the whistleblower who has released some data that he's been privy to for a couple of years during COVID that has alarmed him and that he felt gave significant safety signals that the government ought to be aware of. And he has, with quite high profile, actually been able to get this data to a number of statisticians around the world who, agree with him that it's certainly there's concern here. More important than what Barry has done and what his data shows, and he is certainly the kosher. He's the real deal, and so is the data from what we've seen. It does correspond to real people, and this is a really important point. We've had large data sets from the Office for National Statistics in the UK and the Medicare data that was whistleblown in America, all showing the same thing, that there is significant harm and damage that can only be from the vaccine, because if the vaccine was safe, you wouldn't see these patterns. So Barry's data adds to that. It's a relatively large data set, in New Zealand terms. It represents, a third to a half of the population, for sure. But in the response has been absolutely consistent with the responses to all the other alarm bells that certainly we in NZSOS have been raising, and other people as well, to our regulators here in New Zealand and our government, which is absolute silence. And the very occasional response is derogatory and unscientific, and completely ignores these very, very clear clarion calls that the jab rollout has to be stopped. It just has to be. People are people are dying. Something is killing off people, in a way that even the mainstream media acknowledges is happening in terms of the numbers. We're looking at something like 10 to 12,000 extra deaths since the beginning of the rollout. And most of those aren't due to COVID, the illness itself. And you can say, well, we don't know what it is, but it's not the vaccine. And we're hearing that over and over again from coroners and pathologists and the media. Well, if they don't know what it is, they can't say it's not the vaccine. The vaccine is the likeliest leading candidate, and until they've actually examined that possibility and come clean with why they've proved to themselves and us that it's not the vaccine, then it is. It has to be. We're living in some kind of clown land of Alice in Wonderland, sort of black is white, magical thinking. If we can imagine that there's some other culprit that explains so clearly what is happening around the world in all the most heavily vaccinated countries. And what Barry's done is just another signal that is certainly, not only is it being ignored, but the government seems to be doing everything it can to claw back from people's hard drives, the numbers that have been released, and to make an example of him. The police could have basically knocked on his door, and come in and had a cup of tea and explained that they needed to take him away for questioning. But oh no, they just bashed the door down with no warning, and they cuffed him. 5-6 burly policemen armed, turn up at the house of this humble database administrator who's made no secret, of what he thinks he's seen and what needs to be done about it. So I don't think people are easily scared anymore. And we're hopeful that there's been some sort of change. We've got a bridgehead, if you like, in Parliament. That there is some sympathy for the idea that actually maybe everything that the Ministry of Health and its experts has been telling politicians isn't correct. And we just have to basically be, I suppose, patient for a little bit longer, but keep the pressure on and support, the people who are trying to do the right thing, I suppose. But I'm certainly very grateful for what Barry's done, and there are many people in many other countries around the world that are sort of adding to that. And I'm pleased to see that Wellington's typical usual spring weather hasn't put off many people. A lot of people were expecting to get a drenching, so I know I've stayed home. But the symbolic nature of being back here in front of Parliament, our home for 2.5 weeks, some of us, in early 2022, of course, will always resonate, I think. I'm very pleased to be here, show my support to Barry and his family.
Just in terms of the science, NZDSOS has been asking the pathologists to do testing for the spike proteins and stuff like that, haven't they?
Well, we've been told that the testing's not available in New Zealand. It's a very cheap and easy test, not very expensive.
Because if they're not looking for the cause, then they won't find it, will they?
That's absolutely right, Graham, absolutely. And we've been very specific too. There's a number of cases where it is just inexplicable that the verdict can be, cause unknown, when there is such a clear correlation. Every single one of the Bradford Hill criteria for being able to attribute causation, to what's happened is ignored. So if they don't know what the cause is, then they need to go back and look harder, because it's not acceptable that young people especially, but it's not just young people, older people seem to be being carried off before their time too. It's the statistics are most clearly abnormal in, I suppose, working age adults, people who are, mandated in their workplaces. Insurance statistics don't lie. I mean, governments may, but, private businesses who have a duty to their shareholders to report the truth about what earnings are going to look like, are, again, all singing from the same hymn book. They're saying people are dying more often. And particularly, people who are not expected to die. And of course, we're seeing this in children. And the stories are continuing to reach us and be in the media of young people and of children, who are dying at rates that those of us that have been working in community health and in our communities for our whole careers, have never seen or heard of before.
And they've only acknowledged 4 myocarditis deaths, basically, haven't they? CALM, the organisation that does the research.
Well, this is what some of the government talking heads are saying, and even then they're hedging their bets. They're saying, well, nobody can say for sure that it was the vaccine or myocarditis, but the coroners have been pretty sure in those cases at least, and the pathologists have been sure. So, there's an increasing disconnect between what everybody can verify as the truth and what some of these experts are sounding increasingly desperate and just pulling numbers out of the air. It's quite astonishing, but I think it is a desperation. And I think, that Barry's disclosure will just add further to the calls to this lot to release the public data. If they're so confident that there's nothing to see here, and it's our data, it's about us, it's paid for by the taxpayer, it's anonymised. There is no way that Barry can be done in any way for breaching privacy.
Exactly.
Because he and other people have made sure that it's not possible to identify any people from the way the data's been presented to the public. But they've got it in there, and the politicians need to demand to see for themselves, what's actually going on, because it's going to come back on them, because it always does, sooner or later.